All right, Keith, welcome to No Syllabus Podcast. But before you can even speak, I gotta introduce you. So let me kind of read straight off the bio here. Los Angeles-based comic, actor, voiceover creative. You obviously made name for yourself in comedy. Notable appearances such as Kevin Hart's show, Heart of the City. Lots of commercials. On Site with Sam J. Coming soon too, and all over in New York as well. We'll plug that in towards the end. But more importantly, this is my podcast. So I want to talk about naturally me in the beginning. We met at DC Improv.
Yep.
When I say we met, let's be clear. I like groupied after. You showed up, killed it, and I was like, I need to get a photo. I need to make sure that it was real. I waited at the back of the line patiently. A lot of people taking photos at DC Improv. And then I asked you, can you be on this? And you said yes. And I thought to myself, he's not going to do it. But you reached out, and also I felt very compelled. I'm not going to give away your jokes, but there was a specific bit about Honda Civic where I felt like you were just targeting me.
Dog,
So
I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, wow, am I gonna have to change my joke now? Because you broke the broke the norm of what I usually say. So it's
it killed me.
we're getting to that point, man. It's starting to shift.
I'm excited to have you on. And then just to start it off, let's start off with the origin story before you got
Okay.
into comedy, got out of school, and you thought about. It seems like everyone once they get out of school, they talk about graduate school. Even they're like, I can't wait to be done with school, and then they get out and they're just like, you know what? I might do law school, business school, medical
Yeah,
school, whatever school. So in your case, it was law school versus comedy.
yeah. Graduated. I was like a semester earlier than all of my friends. So I was just kind of hanging out. I went to Florida State in Tallahassee, Florida. So that's a big college town. So you could live there and be happy. You could be fine. And I'll make a quick comparison. Everyone's in comedy's moving to Austin, and I recently went and I figured out why. And it's because it's a college town. You could live with reasonable rent, lifestyle. You could go to the club and not spend thousands of dollars. You could spend like, $40 and have a great night. And that reminded me a lot of Tallahassee. It's like, okay, I could be an adult here without having to spend so much money and like having to grow up fast. So while that was happening, I wanted to be a politician, and I felt like my career would be, in DC in politics, but I would need to go to law school first. So I'm studying for LSAT. Actually, I took it raw dog. I just raw dogged it first. Just walked in, took it. That was a dumb idea. And I was like, okay, I need to study. So was studying for LSAT, planning like what schools I wanted to go to. And then my mom was like, I think you should come to DC. If you come to DC, we'll help you get a down payment on a car, and we'll get you a government job, and you could study for the LSAT out here. And I was like, huh. And she was like, or I could give you some graduation money and you could just, figure it out. And I was like, I'll take the money. I went to a car dealership to get like, like my spark plugs changed, like all the shit you ignore when you get an oil change. You're like, I'll just get the oil change. And they're like, well, you need spark plugs, and you need this, and you need this filter. So I just got all of that done with the money. And while I'm waiting, I'm talking to this guy around my age, and he's like, asking me questions. He's like, yeah, you should sell cars, man. And he's like, that's a decent job. And I ended up taking that. And my logic was I didn't care about selling, like, I don't care about selling cars. So I could quit at any time and not have like, kind of like a law of detachment. Like, I didn't realize that's what it was at the time, but it was. I made a mindset of like taking jobs that I could always quit, that will just pay the rent, but I'm not like attached to it, because I knew if I made like 85,000 a year, I was comfortable. I was like able to like ball out and buy the things I wanted to whenever I wanted to. I probably wouldn't be so dream driven. I'd be more money driven. And so I took this car salesman job, and through that, I started to find my comedic voice. I know that sounds weird, but I do shit like sell a car with an accent. So I'd like walk up, tap the car, and be like, "She's a beaut, ain't she?" And like, like one time it stuck, so I had to stay in character the entire sale and just have like like a country accent the whole time because it worked. And
Oh
like the
wow.
guy was like an older white dude, just liked my vibe, and I was like, all right, well now we're here. My manager was so pissed off at me, but he knew I had like this comedy element to me. So one day he pulls me to the side and he's like, hey man, are you still studying for the LSAT? And really I wasn't, because selling cars, that's a 12-hour day, so you're going home and you're kind of opening the book and you're like, yeah, fuck it. But he was like, are you still studying for LSAT? I was like, kind of. He was like, okay, well, let me ask you this. He was like, are you doing it for the money, or do you really want to be a lawyer? Are you really passionate about this? And I was like, you know what, I'm not too sure. And he was like, well, if you're doing it for the money, you're a pretty good salesman, and if you're trying to move up in car sales, I make as much as like an average lawyer. He was like, you could eventually do what I do. And he's like, I don't have student loan debt. I'm making well over six figures. And he was like, or you go to law school, you're going to be miserable and then just be in debt and be miserable. Or you could try stand up. And he was like, you all you do is fuck around and you're pretty funny. And I think you should try stand up. And he told me he used to be in the Navy and lived in San Diego and used to go to this place called the Comedy Store. He was like, there's a place out there. I don't know if you ever make it to California, but I think you should try it. So then I ended up signing up. Well, brief story. So I kind of gave in. I was kind of in between. My dad is a military guy, so he finally convinced me to go talk to some military folks, go to the recruiters. So I went to the Army and Air Force. I remember I went 2 days in a row to both of them, and neither of them were enthused nor wanted to really talk to me. Like I had papers in hand. I'm a graduate, ready to join. When's the next class going out? And they're like, just come back tomorrow. And I was like, okay. And I was like, that's weird. The next day I came back, they're like, he's out right now. You want to come back tomorrow? And I was like, this is a sign I'm not supposed to be doing this. So I went back. My buddy was sitting at the table, and I was like, yeah, this is weird. Kind of threw my like little portfolio resume on the table. I was like, Doug, I was like, the recruiters were like gone 2 days in a row. He was like, yeah, that's a sign. So he was like, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to sign you up for an open mic. You're too funny to join the military, bro. He was like, you're going to be miserable there too. So sign me up for an open mic. It was at FSU, and I tried it, and it clicked immediately. Like I think I was supposed to do like 5 minutes, but I ended up like talking for 10. And I don't think the set was good, but I was able to like find my voice. I was more like free flowing at the time. I felt charisma coming out. I felt like little pockets of jokes coming out, and I was like, man, I really love this feeling, and I just chased that feeling from that moment on. So at that point, I was like, I don't think it's law school anymore, and I made the decision to be a stand-up comic, and that's when I chose stand-up over law school.
I got to go into that moment of your first time on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe this is just a hater in me. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
I think we give too much credit to our friends in a sense that, oh, you're funny. And then, but I've known you 12 years, so the jokes are kind of built in. And it's also easy to be the funny person just around friends. But when you're not
Right.
going on stage, what was going through your mind? I know you took the LSAT without preparation, so the confidence has always been there. So no warm up, you're just gonna show up and just
Just showed
play
up
pickup, no
with the
problem.
pencil.
Right.
A
Right.
calculator just in case I needed it, but
Just showing up. And did you sweat it? Did you prepare the jokes? Like what were your mindset going up there?
yeah, so I remember having some jokes where I started talking about being Asian and black, and I was like, I don't feel this. I don't feel Asian. I don't feel black. I'm kind of in between, and like I look around at my black side, and I'm hanging out with guys named Olu and Yomi, and those are my black friends. And I was like, that's not, you know, I was just kind of like toying with these ideas of what would eventually become the Kevin Hart set. But that was what, 8, maybe 7 years later. But I knew I had something with just being mixed and my perspective of things. I would go on stage because I was in a fraternity, so we would have some sort of like stage presence where we'd have to do some type of talking on, you know, in front of people. So it wasn't just like, oh, I'm the funny friend. But here's the thing, I'm not even the funniest friend in my group. There's people who I grew up with who'd smoke me. Just they're way more hilarious. They're way more funny. They're naturally funny. They're better storytellers. So this was coming from like a, hey man, I think it is stand up because your mind is just different. Not necessarily like you're funny. It's just like your mind is probably broken. It's probably autism or something. But like that's the route they were pushing me towards.
I think one, like as I was doing research to get you on the show here, one of the parts that really stuck with me is you taking chances. You've always been so far, at least in your life. You just say, okay, I'm gonna go for it. Whether it be at LSAT, going on the stand up, you always gone for it. Going to London, I would like you to touch on that as well. But
Yeah.
it seems like you're always kind of going big when you're not quite ready on the outside, like on the optics side, you're not quite
Yeah.
ready. And then we have that a lot in terms of a lot of business school students also listen to this. It's like, hey, I'm not ready for that job. But it seems like you never had that problem. So
Yeah.
where does that come from?
Probably Kanye West, if I'm being honest.
Okay, let's talk
uh,
about Ye. Old Ye or new Ye?
I'm a fan of Ye, period. So just through thick and thin.
The
I
loyalty, I love that.
I would I always felt like I'm not seen in the correct lens, if you will. So like right now, for example, I feel like I'm the sharpest I've been in a very long time comedically. I'm creating these like great concept shows like On Site or Culture Court. And you know, that's just one of many that I'm just like throwing out here. And we'll relate it to business school. Like, you know, a show is just a startup. It's just a you build your team, you're trying to, you know, you have an overhead, you're trying to get a profit, you get seed money or, you know, whoever can invest in you, and then you just see how far you go. And I always feel like my companies aren't seen in that moment in that time. But then years later, I'll see something similar go up. And I'm like, oh, am I just like ahead of my time? Or was it just not the right time? Was it not the right people or whatever? But like that happens a lot with me. So I think my risks are coming from frustration. It's coming from like me being like, okay, well, I guess I got to keep going big because going small just kind of minimalizes my dream and it just kind of stifles me. It forces me to live in a box. Yeah, I'll just go big, like whether it's London or whether it's like just, I mean, I think the first risk once I decided to go to stand up was moving to California. So I was one of the very few people who just left Florida, packed up my car, and then moved to San Diego. But I'm always seeing windows, universal windows. It's not just, hey man, I'm going, and everyone's like, what the fuck? The universe will like open these little windows. It's not doors. I have to jump through windows. But my uncle lived out there. And this is one of my favorite uncles on my mom's side. And he was like, hey, heard you're doing stand up. If you want to come out here, I've seen, and he mentioned the club. My car sales boss told me, he was like, there's a comedy store out in La Jolla. Maybe you could go try some jokes out there. And it clicked because I didn't realize like where he was in San Diego. And once he said that, I was like, oh, that's a sign. So chase that. So I went out to go visit and I loved California. And I was like, okay, cool. We're there now. So that was the first big risk. So it does seem, you know, lofty, but they are a little more calculated, if you will. So basically lived with my uncle rent free for about a year and a half, just kind of fine tuning my comedy. And once I realized how I was funny, I wasn't necessarily good at stand up. I just knew how I was funny. I was like, okay, I know what type of funny I am. I know what I'm supposed to do. And now I went to LA. So that was my, first and second big risk.
What is that discovery process like? That last bit there, I figured out how I was funny. I think that's applicable to everyone listening, including myself. Not necessarily in a
Right.
sense that how am I funny or how can I add value, essentially.
Right.
Like to anything I'm doing, what makes me unique in a way that where you'll get people's attention. Because whether they be comedy or jobs or anything, what you're looking for is providing value and grabbing attention to provide that
Right.
value. And then you figured it out. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying you did it overnight. You took a year and a half to slowly kind of try
Yeah.
it. But what was that discovery process like, or when did you realize, oh, this is what I am?
I started to fine tune some thoughts, which would ultimately be jokes. And I remember a friend of mine was saying, I was like, how can you tell you're funny? I was like, always seeking from other people. And he was like, you're getting funny when you stop waiting for the laughs and it's coming after a moment. So, ba da
Wow.
ba ba da ba. And then instead of waiting, you're just like laughs here, and it's a confidence. It's just like they're gonna laugh here, they're gonna laugh here, they're gonna laugh here. And once I found that feeling, I was like, okay, boom, boom, boom. And then I started like playing with the decibel levels of laughter. So I want a little laugh here, but I want a big laugh here, and then I want them to pull back here. So I started playing with energy. And so it'd go up, down, boom. And I wanted to see, like, remember in the Matrix where the kid bends the spoon and he's like, if you want to bend the spoon, you got to be the spoon and bend. I started playing with that idea. I know that's weird, but I
Love that.
started bending spoons and I was like, oh, okay. I have control on stage. I wasn't good at stand up yet, but I knew I could be funny when I wanted to. And that was the feeling I was chasing.
Going deeper into that, from just listening to you, telling your jokes, as well as like all the things that you've done and all the interviews you've been a part of, one thing that stuck out to me more than anything is you resist the siren song. Like what I mean by that is like the Odyssey, Homer Odyssey, like they talk about, oh, there's a beautiful like where are sirens and then they
Don't
crash
crash
into
the
the
ship.
ship. Yeah, exactly. So that's so what do I mean by that? Going for comedy versus taking a job, saving up some money, and then going back to comedy. Like
Yeah.
that's just something that I've seen you kind of resist. You're like, no, I'm all in. And then obviously a lot of successful comics did the same. It just takes a very long time, as everyone knows it. It's not an overnight success. But
Yeah.
Jimmy O Yang also kind of started, I think, in San Diego, and then he
Yeah.
slowly built his way up. And then when I was reading his book, I was like, oh my gosh, he was a strip club DJ. He was doing a lot of things, a lot of random things to get there, but he never said, I'm going to go be an accountant
Right.
for 6 years and then I'll come back to comedy. There's like,
Right.
I'm just doing comedy. So, how, two questions. One, how do you fight that thought?
Uh-huh.
And then two, how is that like internal dialogue? Like as you're fighting that thought, what is the internal dialogue? Because some days
Oh,
you're up, some days you're down.
right. And it's dictated by literal money. So I worked a few odd jobs, and those small odd jobs ended up taking me to LA and taking me through like, rough patches, if you will. So after car salesman, I worked at H&R Block, and I was like the little front desk guy. And that was in San Diego. And I worked that to get me again a job I knew I could quit until I ended up. So one of my last tests of leaving San Diego was there was at the Comedy Store. They had a group of door guys, people who worked at the club called the Best of San Diego, and that was one of the few notches that you could get. It was two: win the competition or be Best of San Diego. I noticed the competition was weighted by how many people you brought. So even if you did the best, you wouldn't necessarily win. So I was like,
Oh,
I don't want to put my faith in that system. I'll put my faith in the Comedy Store system. That's been the thing that I've been chasing for a while now. And I was working at H&R Block, and then I ended up getting Best of San Diego, and then I was able to quit H&R Block, which was after tax season anyway. So then I worked at La Jolla for the rest of the time as a door guy, and that gave me pocket money. So then I knew it was time to take another job. I got right next to the Comedy Store in San Diego, there was a Verizon store, and then I was taking trips up to LA. Next to the Comedy Store in Hollywood, there was a Verizon store, the same company. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna just transfer here to go here. And so I did need money. I did take these odd jobs, but again, I kept with the philosophy take a job you could quit. And then the job that ultimately helped me was my college network buddy ended up getting me a production job, a PA job for a TV show. So a PA job, you're just grabbing lunches, you're doing, you're just doing grunt work, but you have to be quick on your feet. And, I ended up getting good at that and ended up getting more and more production jobs. The job that ultimately shaped my life in a way I didn't expect it to was Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I was a PA there, worked for the show, and that just gave me a lens of the lifestyle. Got to see Kanye, which was cool. I'm like, okay, I get to see. I sat on a wooden piano that looked like the Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy piano. I was like, okay,
Ooh.
I'm here. But that job ended up, because I was good at that job, they're like, what do you want to do? I know you do stand up. What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I have to have my nights. So I can't always be on set because it started, messing up with my stand-up time. Because I'd get off at 8, mics start at 7. So then I wasn't able to get up. So they're like, go to post-production and learn how to edit. That way you have control of your content. This is before content was a thing. You have control and you know how to create from the back end. So I trusted that, learned how to edit. And that job ultimately gave me, let's just say worst case scenario, I fell out of comedy. I'll probably be a post-production edit, like an editor or something like that. I could create TV once I get the footage. So I make all of my content, I make all of my reels and stuff like that because of that job. So that would be my accounting. But it felt okay because I'm still making television, if that makes sense. And now I'm just making content for me. So that's been my logic. That landed me to a safer place. And now I know how to, since I'm making these little, small business plans, I'm able to make a concept of here's what it's going to look like. Here's a 30-second sizzle reel of what my show idea is going to look like. I've edited, I shot it, did all the things myself.
Could you dive into what you just mentioned, create from the back end, for those that are not familiar with that term?
Yeah. So here's how reality TV show works. You'll go to a dinner and they'll be like, Sue, you're going to tell Keith you're mad at him because he skipped the podcast. And then you'll come in to dinner and you'll be like, Keith, you skipped the podcast, and you'll throw a drink on me and then we'll talk about it and then we'll resolve it. And then, the footage is an hour long, but it's just you doing it multiple times. So they'll be like, okay, well, you missed the water on the first one. Try to hit them on the second one. Or you stumbled when you said you stumbled on podcast, you said TV show. So say podcast, right? So it's written loosely. So then by the time you're done, you have 4 takes within an hour. And my job as a story editor is to take the moment from the first, when you walk in, because you look the coolest. Then the second moment is when you said podcast correctly. The third moment is when you landed the drink on me. The fourth moment is when you spoke about it and we had a good heart to heart and it looked like you were about to cry because of how important the podcast was. So I take those 4 moments and make one big moment. And that's how I work on the back end. So in stand-up, you're seeing the same thing where you write a joke, but this person said something that kind of threw it off, but then you had a recovery 3 minutes later because you thought of something. So what I do is set up punch, add that moment, and then cut the time down that I responded down to immediate to make it look like I was faster than you. So that's editing on the back end. And that's what's happening with Reels, because we're in a content heavy, industry now. People are being like, what do you do? And then the person, says, I work in tech. And then you go, oh, check this out. And then it's like, okay, that's the joke. Boom. You just edit it into a 30-second space.
I love the industry insight there, because I don't watch reality TV.
Okay.
But I'm always surprised how much power it has
Yes.
For example, Bravo. Anytime I come across Bravo and the real whatever, which is not, in my opinion, it's not real. But again, that's just hater talking.
Right.
But I see that, and what I do notice as someone who's not part of that show or who watches it religiously, I just see the unbelievable storytelling. It's like the same story. You nailed it. Like someone walks in, they always go to dinner together. Someone's mad, someone gets tossed, security guard jumps in, heart to heart moment, reunion, BravoCon, millions of dollars.
Exactly.
And I was like, wow, that's unbelievable. So, okay, so that's how it works. I was wondering, like, how do they keep having the same conversations? And it's just never, it's just season after season.
It's it's the same thing. It's the machine. So they just like if you look at the idea of like what Kim Kardashian is, she does improv. She's very funny. She's very quick on her feet, and she's a great actor. A lot of people don't see it that way, but that's what she's doing on a day-to-day basis on the show. She's going in, her voice. There's a clip of Paris Hilton in Senate in a congressional hearing, and she kind of code switches and she uses her like Paris Hilton voice, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, girl, that's so hot." And then she gets down to business. She's like, "Actually, what I'm here for is for the environmental change of blah 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 blah." But that's what it is. It's like it's a character. Paris Hilton is a character. So when she's like, "Oh, that's hot," that's like seeing, Denzel Washington. I'm not comparing the two, but it's like seeing Denzel as the equalizer. He's doing certain things as the character. Paris Hilton is a character, and she's going to play dumb at the dinner table for comedic effect.
Or Denzel in Training Day.
Training Day, yeah, exactly.
That was the first time we saw Denzel as a bad guy. So
right,
that was a crazy moment for Denzel fans out there, including myself. Another aspect I wanted to hit on is you mentioned this in the past, not where I want to be, but working towards that goal. And I would like you to explain that a little bit more, because just from me doing research, I mean, we talked a little bit before starting this. I watched everything. Everything that I can find, I consume. That was like, could be soon as 6 months ago, a couple days ago, to years ago. And then from that point on, you obviously have grown in many ways. And then like even your perspective has changed a little bit. But what I don't understand is how do you set these goals, internal, external dialogue? Because it just seems like you're on the steady climb. It's not like you're on a downward. It's a steady climb.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not sure. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm working towards that. So in a short way to say it, goalpost keeps moving. How do you even choose that goalpost to begin with?
Man, it is tough. I think right now in stand-up, I think I have the respect of my peers and the acknowledgement that I'm good at what I do and what I create. That's not reflected monetarily. So, and it's not that I'm not capable of like it. From what I understand and learn, I think my job is applicable somewhere in the industry that could get me paid a decent amount. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'm holding out more, but I think I should be getting paid a little bit more than I should be, or at least being able to work different jobs that could supplement my life a little bit, that would reflect how good I am. And I'm just not at that point yet. I'll give you an example. I have friends that I started with that I've given them the thing, and now they are millionaires. So I'm now around peers that are millionaires or close to being millionaires. And I'm looking around, I'm like, man, okay. And I'm happy for them. Don't get me wrong, because it's also a reflection of me. Like, okay, my ideas do work. My ideas are like effective. I'm just, now it's just a matter of time. But, and I feel like I'm on the upswing still, where I'm not like declining. I'm not, destructive in any way, shape, or form. It's just a matter of, time and preparation lining up exactly and going on to where it's supposed to be. So.
What does that promised land look like? Because I see like comedians in a way, when I look at it from the outside, are so malleable. Some just do straight shows, and I think that's more than enough. Some go back behind the scenes and create shows.
Yeah.
Some get on commercials, some become, some acting shows, some goes into
Right.
movies. There's some just writes books, like comedian like Tom Papa writes a lot of books back and forth. And so it's just like, what does that
What is
promised
that?
land look for
What does
you?
success look like for me?
Do you want to be on a commercial for a JP Morgan like Kevin Hart? What does that look
uh,
like?
I mean, Kevin Hart would be a blueprint or like a mold, if you will. Not necessarily. I'll say this: Kevin Hart with a little more substance, a little more, weight to him. Kevin Hart's broad, and I do like that because he does reach a little bit of everybody, and I do think I
Hmm.
can reach a little bit of everyone as well. But there's times where I want him to focus in a little bit, and for example, with his interview series, it's like there could have been more depth, but instead he's like, okay, I gotta like mass product this, like, you know what I mean? So Kevin Hart's a good example. Dave Chappelle's a good example. Danny McBride is a good example. I think ultimately success for me is access, and being backed by, like I don't want to seem like vain, but like backed by money, so I could know that I could create a product with the funding that I need to get to the space where I need. Because like that's the only thing I'm missing right now. Is like, okay, I can make this thing that could get to this altitude with nothing. So give me products to make my spaceship go higher. Give me the things that I need. Give me the access. Give me the studios. And so if I get that, I feel like that would be success to me. So
Okay.
it's not
And
necessarily fame or a monetary amount. Of course, I want to be comfortable. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to like, have some walking around money. But I think it's access and a properly funded project or two.
I, I also don't think saying, I know you mentioned a few seconds ago about, oh, that's like vain is like money back in the, I don't think that's vain at all, in
Right,
a
right,
sense that that's also everyone. When I say everyone, I have peers at school who's like, oh, if I just have the funding, I can develop this app. And I'm like, we still talking about apps. 2024. Oh, if I have funding, I could launch this. If I had funding, like, so everyone's focus is the same in a sense that like, okay, like I need money, and I think that's also investment professionals the same thing. They're like, oh, let's create this vehicle.
right.
I need money so I can buy these businesses.
Yeah,
So in that sense, you're thinking very business like
right.
you're logically thinking. It seems like you made a lot of logical decisions throughout, and the part that gets to me more than anything is you being able to kind of waiting your turn in a way,
Uh huh.
because you killed it at DC Improv. Everyone listening, go look at Keith Johnson HQ on Instagram. Find them everywhere. We're gonna do more of that towards the end. But you killed it. My buddies and I didn't know about your comedy before that night, but then we just couldn't stop reciting your jokes poorly on the ride home, like in a terrible way. We're just cracking up. What I want to get to is, just from watching that, I feel like you can be the person, the
Uh huh.
franchise player. You get what I mean? It's
Right.
like, okay, you're the person. But obviously at the show, you had your great friend Sam J also there, who at that time in that setting,
Is the person.
Sam is a franchise player, right?
Right.
And then you mentioned this before, like, which I thought was so humble and so wise in a way, maybe because you've just been in the industry a long time. You're like, hey, if I'm getting featured, if I'm opening, my job is to build a show for someone else.
Right.
Like you mentioned that in other interviews before. I'm like, oh wow, that's like ego out the door. It's like, I'm gonna just build it for Sam. I'm gonna build it for whoever else. But how do you balance that in your mind? Because you're like, look, I could go drop 20,
Right.
I could drop 25, but I'll get the board because
And the assist. Yeah.
yeah, I'll get the board. I can play, but like this is my role right now. But I feel like sometimes I'm gonna have to get my playing time, or I'm gonna have to slide in. I'm not a big Golden State fan, but it's like back in the day when Curry came in and it was Monte Ellis.
Yeah.
And I don't know when it was all Monte and
Yeah.
Steph was kind of opening it in the back, but it was mostly
Uh,
Monte, and then
yep.
eventually Monte slid out, and then Steph is what he is. So it's like, how do you balance that internally, where you're like, oh, I can kill it,
Yeah.
but
It is to the point now, and I'll be very vulnerable that like I'll watch basketball podcasts and they'll be like, who's better than Steph Curry was so and so, and Bob stats was so much better than Steph Curry, but he never got playtime on the Warriors because he was always. And then they'll show a picture of Steph, and then Bob's in the back. I'm just making a Bob for comedic effect, but
Yeah.
Bob's sitting on the bench with his warm up, and then they show him in practice dunking and like shooting the lights out, and they're like, he just never got the playtime. He was better than Steph. Steph always was on his toes with him. That scares me a little bit because I'm like, what the fuck did Bob do wrong for him not to get the playtime? Or was it just politics? Was it just timing? You know, just shit like that. That does scare me to be one of those players because like you said, I think the same way. I do feel like I could be a franchise player. I do think that I could lead a team. Am I LeBron? No. The LeBrons know who they are. Am I like a Dame or like a Jamal Murray or a Jokic? Like where I'm like, I know like I could take a team to the championship. Yes. I feel like I am that. And I know I've seen the LeBrons go through. I've seen, the greats go through. And I'm like, okay, well, I could beat them. I could hoop with the best of them. So it is, we'll switch metaphors again. It is like, I think that's why I take the Kanye approach of like being able to produce and rap because I do know that I could create for myself and as well as others. So like when we came up with On Site, I'm like, okay, here's a perfect vessel for you to be Sam. And all you have to do is sit in this chair and I will sit in the coach captain chair, even though I made both of the chairs, if you will. So it is like kind of taking an ego, like understanding that, yes, you can have an ego, but it's okay to sit here and you could still shine. And it takes a little bit of work, but once you see the final product, you're there. It's like, okay, would you rather, like, let's say Kevin Durant, okay, you can't win with OKC, but you can win with the Warriors and Steph. Are you okay with letting that happen? Even LeBron, you can't win on your own yet, but you can win with D Wade. Are you willing to relinquish your ego so you could make that happen? And I put myself in those positions, and I'll work and collaborate with other people, and most of them are my friends. Sam started with me, Garrick started with me, my buddy Matt Lockwood started with me. So we're all peers in a sense that we're building together. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful to hear, and it's so applicable because it stuck out to me. Because when I'm not a comedian, but when you work anywhere, what you got is people who you believe are not as deserving, or I don't know. You just have these thoughts when someone get promoted, and you're like, wait, why, how?
Yep.
or you're in a group setting, and then you're like, I feel like I've done a lot there, but I'm not necessarily getting what I thought I would be getting, and then
right.
Or I'm put in a position where I have to play a certain role. This person likes to present a little more than I do, so I'll take a back seat. But I feel like I've done just the same amount of work, but I'm not getting the same amount of shine because I don't have the same amount of time on the mic presenting,
right.
And in terms of like a work setting or what have you. And then that's been probably one of the toughest conversations I had internally with myself, because you're kind of talking down your ego, and then you're like, do I just leave this company? Do I leave this job? Do I leave this position? Do I get new friends? Like, there's a lot of things that go through that. I just didn't think about it in terms of comedy.
There's a lot of sports and business like ideas that are applicable to stand up in the entertainment industry. I think the difference is in entertainment, it's not a numerical value. So someone could be like, I think they have the it factor, and you're watching them and they're like, oh, you don't know stand up, because if you knew it, you would know that this person's not good. But a good movie I've been watching that's kind of both analytical and money based is that baseball movie called Moneyball. But it's sometimes I feel like I'm the Oakland A's, where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have the backing of the Yankees, but I have to find these players, including myself. I get on base a lot, and I just have to have that confidence in myself. Like, I get on base and my percentage is high. I'm not, for whatever reason, as marketable as A-Rod, but I feel like I could, win a championship, and I feel like my system works. So yeah, it's tough, man. You got to talk down your ego, talk up your confidence, which is a weird thing because it could get intertwined very easily. you can't get deflated. But you still have to be honest with yourself and be like, okay, well, your weakness is this, and you have to strengthen, all sides of you. You have to look at yourself, and I had a friend say I was headlining, and this was before DC. He was like, "You're kind of dicking around on stage when you're headlining." He was like, "That's why they're not going to bring you back." And I was like, "Oh." He was like, "Don't dick around when you're the big guy." He's like, "Because now you're the franchise player. You're shooting from half court, thinking it's cool because only 10 people are in the audience. Because you're used to going out with Sam when she sold out." And he's like, "No, you have to build this audience one by one." And I'm like, "Oh shit." So I think that kind of switched my mindset, recently, because I was frustrated with like my 5 to 10 people who were showing up. And then, that clicked. And then I started like appreciating more and more, more and more moments until I, just was like, all right, fuck it. I'm going to bring my A game every single time. I'm not going to leave anything on the table.
I love that mindset. And another aspect of it is it's the same thing for me regarding this podcast or newsletter. It's also weird in a sense that you just never know who's kind of in the audience or listening. And I thought, all right, podcast is going to be like the bigger than my newsletter. I write a little newsletter, which is essentially a diary piece. Like I wrote diaries and then I just share them out, just like a written form, short diaries. I was like, no one's gonna read this. And when I released it, it was just my mom and my girlfriend. I was like, my girlfriend always didn't open the email, so whatever, it is what it is. But my mom always did.
You can see
yeah, I was like, all right, I got 2 people. Like, why is it at 50% open? Like, so
shout out to MailChimp.
yeah, exactly. What's going on there? But then that grew so much faster than anything else. It went from 2 to 100, 200, 300, 400. Now it's passing 500. So it's kind of going faster and faster. And I'm like, why? I thought my podcast would go faster because of the fact that I'll have someone else here who cares about me versus right now I'm attached to Keith, right? So it's like, that would go faster, but it hasn't always been the case. It's kind of interesting to hear you talk about you got to build your own audience, like 5 to 10 people, and then they start to kind of snowball. And then I certainly had that in my own experience doing this myself, but it's also rewarding in a sense that those 5 to 10 people, now hopefully 11 or more, because I got me and then I got a couple friends who's big fan of yours now, but they just like you. And I think that's what's so beautiful about stand-up and podcasting and things. Like they just like your perspective. And that's such a rare thing. They don't like you because you're buying them dinner.
Right.
They just like you because what's going on inside of your head and how you communicate that outward. And did you ever have to, let's go back to Ye, did you ever have to rebrand your comedy? Or like, let's say you start getting a little bit of success. At the first open mic, I'm sure the stakes were somewhat low. But then you have some name, people start noticing you, and they know you as this guy that tells this type of jokes. But you're trying to switch your style up, or you want to, or do you go back to those people and then exactly, or do you just double down? You're like, this is me. I'm just gonna double down on this thing.
Well, I don't know how far back you went, but my stage name used to be Keith Soul, Seoul.
Shout out to Korea.
And that was a brand / marketing choice, if you will. Johnson, in my opinion, was a little too commonplace. And Soul stuck out. Keith Soul, 5 and 5 letters. It just looks good on paper. So I started with Keith Soul. And then I had some friends talk to me, and they're like, when are you going to just be yourself and go back to Keith Johnson? And I was like, I'll do it right now. And I just...
Those are good friends.
Yeah. And so I think anytime you're being yourself, you're never wrong. It forces you to live and die on that sword, but I'd rather do that than die as somebody else. So if I don't make it as Keith Johnson, I'm okay with that. If I didn't make it as Keith Soul, I would have always wondered, like, well, what if Keith Johnson was the one that was supposed to take me to, to that space?
How long did it take until you got to this mindset? Soul to Johnson.
I think I switched. What's funny is I think it was like 5 years in. That's when I made the switch. And then after that, that's when everything started to happen. So I ended up getting TV and started getting commercial, blah, 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 blah. I think there was a shift at that moment because that's when I took the trip to London. I was just forced to believe in myself because I could always just leave it as Keith Soul, like, oh, that's what Keith Soul does, and started becoming an identity. But then I had to be like, no, this is Keith Johnson. And I think even now, when my buddy was like, you're dicking off at the end of your sets when you're headlining, it was a Keith Johnson thing. I knew, like, I could either get defensive when he said it, or I could be like, nah, you're right. This is why I was doing it, and this is how I'm going to fix it. So I was always forced to reconcile with myself at that moment. I think it came in bits and pieces. So even Sam recently said something. She was like, you've always been weird, and you have weird thoughts. And now you're starting to piece it together with like thought, weird perspective. So it's like there was a time where I was just focusing on weird shit. And I was like, I know that this is who I am. This is just what I do as a person. So I have to sharpen this perspective. I also have to sharpen, like, the way I see the world. And then I have this over here, and then I have this over here. So I'm like kind of crafting multiple plates or spinning multiple plates, and I'm just learning how to do each of those.
How much of that do you bring to your professional life? So let me preface that. We hear the term be authentic.
Yeah.
And then if you're in a corporate setting, being authentic means don't be too authentic.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Like, that's what it means when you're like, oh, we want you to be you, but like
right.
maybe 5% you, 95% this rule. And I'm not necessarily hating on corporate, but that's just like what it is. You got to balance it in a way. In your case, it's a little bit different because you don't have group of 20 people that you see every day you have to work with in a way.
Right.
The same office, you're sitting next to it. That person's eating their oatmeal. That person's, just flaking off the crumbs off of croissant that they always eat. You're not dealing with that. But you're still dealing with coworkers that are more of industry based. Like, oh, is he a fit for this role, or can we get him to? Like, so how much of the weird Keith versus let's kind of dial that down Keith? Like, how do you play the authenticity?
I had a conversation with a buddy of mine and it started off that Paris Hilton video I mentioned, and that was just a noticeable code switch. And I was like, do you still code switch? And he was like, yeah. He was like, I have to. And I remember making an intention, which is funny, is after I worked at Verizon, I was like, I'm never going to code switch again. I'm just going to live and die. You die many deaths dying, living as you, though, when you make that choice. But the roles that are for you are literally for you. Like, I know it's corny, but that Postmates commercial, when I got that,
the pirate,
it was me. I just, like, I knew it was for me. I just did an audition maybe like a couple of days ago, and I was like, this isn't for me. And I'm okay with that. But when I saw that, I was like, there's no way I'm not getting this. And I was okay with that. It was just a natural feeling for me. I'll give you another example. Like in DC, I worked clean. I didn't really cuss.
Mm-hmm.
One, because I knew my parents were coming, but two, I like when you're living and dying as you don't want to be a piece of shit human being. You're building a vessel that's going to last. So ultimately, you're improving your human soul and your person. So you're not just being a piece of shit. You're trying to get the best version of yourself. So you're okay putting that self in the boardroom. I'm okay putting myself anywhere, and knowing that I could, talk business. We could transition from comedy to business, or to art, or to sports in a matter of seconds, because that you're buying me. It's like, if you buy Apple, you're buying Steve Jobs. He's going to be an asshole. You've already accepted that. That asshole is why this looks so good,
Right. Yeah.
It's so you have to be okay with it.
Regarding being you, how do you deal with criticism of you being you? Let me get specific here. When someone says you're not funny playing a character, whatever, that was a character wasn't funny. But if you're not funny being Keith Johnson, I don't know how you necessarily deal with that. That's the part that I was kind of thinking about, like kind of bringing it back. I just finished reading Creative Act by Rick Rubin.
Yeah, that was a good book.
So My guy's just full of bars. You're just
Yeah.
writing bars. It took him 7 years to write that piece.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that. It kind of goes back to what you're saying. I'm going to connect it back here. When he was writing a book, everyone publishers were saying, "Hey, we don't want you to write this book. We want you to write a book about, working with Johnny Cash, the Beatles, whatever, Jay-Z, Adele. Like, we want you to write about that." He's like, "No, I don't want to write about that. I want to write about like what it's like to be a creative. It's for everyone." And
Right.
they're like, that's not. No, like, no, you're gonna. And he said, "All right, fine." And they just wrote it for 7 years, and he just brought the completed book. And then they were like, "Okay, this is a all right. Maybe get a second book out, working with whoever else." And it's like, "No, this is a book."
This is the
And
book. This is a
yeah,
Bible.
this is me. Yeah, exactly. This is me. This is Rick Rubin. And then here we go. And then it obviously turned great. And one of the parts that helped me with more than anything was he wrote there. It's like music, comedy, all this. Like all the creative act is the same. There is no wrong because that's the expression of you. So
Yeah.
when I write my newsletter, which is my diary, it's reason for that. It's not on stock market valuation. It's not on politics. It's just my diary. So if you're like, "Oh no, that's wrong," it's like, "No, it's not wrong. That's just literally my diary. That was me
Yeah.
on Tuesday. I was not feeling it." So, or that was me on Wednesday. I was really feeling myself. So that's what that is. So how do you deal with those type of criticism being you and telling your comedy?
I mean, I'm learning to trust myself. I think because I think you said something that kind of struck is it took him 7 years to write that book. 7 years is a long time, and each year you think that book's ready, but it's not. So each year, I've been doing comedy for 13, so that's only two books, right? Two a book. Once I zoomed out, I was able to see some of my ideas take form, and I understood that it just needed time, and I became less defensive. Or I'll give you an example. So I don't know if you pay attention to the zeitgeist, but every girl is talking about how she has autism now. When she's, I'm a cute girl and I have autism. Oh, I'm so on the spectrum. Maybe 3 years ago, I was doing a joke about how women are underdiagnosed with autism. And I would make fun of it in a very playful way, but people would come up to me and they'd be like, "You're misogynistic. You're doing
Oh
this." And
wow.
I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Bro, I'm backed by research." Because the girl I used to date challenged me on this, and she was studying to be a therapist, and she came back to me and she was like, "Keith, I think you're right." And I was like, "I knew I was right."
3 years early.
3 years early, and that was 5 years. So then 2 years later, I made the joke, and then now it's a common thing. But those are the ideas where I kind of sit back and I'm like, that's funny. Like y'all challenged me on this idea, and those same girls are now, doing jokes on stage, being like, "I'm on the spectrum," and I'm like, you thought I was misogynistic, but I was correct. I've seen enough of those little versions of my ideas turn into what humanity is doing and what the world is doing, that I'm okay knowing that I'm building something, in the future. I get more offended when people say my friends aren't funny. Like I'll be like, "Oh, you like," I would judge them harsher if they say, "Okay, well, I don't find you that funny, Keith." And I'm like, "All right, I see where you're coming from." Because like a friend will see me in a different lens or know how funny I really am. So when they see me on stage, they're like, "Oh, you're only 30% funny of what you really are." And, they may be right. But if someone's saying, "Oh, I don't think Sam's funny," I'm going to get offended on
Mm.
on her behalf more so than myself, if that makes sense. But if it's
I
me, I'm like, "Okay, whatever. I'm just not your cup of tea."
Now, I'm sure you had a lot of those moments as well as a lot of up moments, like very happy moments throughout
Right.
your career, 13-year career so far. What are some memorable wins in your career milestone that like kind of that you held on to? So I'll give you like a little example. One of the things that stuck with me about Bill Burr talking about it was he was living in New York. He would just go to he would get like a spaghettio and then get like Denny's like breakfast pancakes and a Grand Slam, and he would just shove that down in the morning. So he just and lots of bread, so he doesn't have to spend money to eat, because New York, anytime you walk outside, it's like $30
$30,
immediately.
yeah,
Immediately $30 gone. So he's like, "I'm gonna do that, and then I don't have to eat anything, stuff myself to the gills." And then he was doing that, and no one was like really coming to the show that much. And then he said one of the nights, Dave Chappelle kind of, it was at the staircase before, maybe it was a cellar, I don't know
yeah,
where.
yeah. And
I
he
don't
was
know
like,
if you're
"You're
at
gonna
it.
have a hard time."
Yeah, you're gonna have a hard time. It's a really long road, you being you, because Bill Burr is being Bill Burr.
Yeah,
And like, but once you make it, all those people are gonna be like obviously like your fan, they're gonna love Bill Burr, and obviously he sold out Fenway. That's kind of big deal. Fenway is selling out stadium.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, did you have moments like that? Because when Bill Burr talked about it, it's like I forget which interview it was on. He was telling the interviewer, like, dude, I held on to that for years. Like,
Right, right,
because he
right.
didn't blow up year after. It's just like years after that, he still didn't blow up. So he was just like, I just held on to that for years. Do you have one of those wins?
That's funny. I listened to that, and he has another one where he did a set and it went well, and he went home and he was like so happy, and his girlfriend was like, "You're so happy because of this joke." It was just like he started like really, holding on to these little moments. I'm from the school of Bill Burr, Patrice, those guys. So I've studied them and understood that I'm taking a route that is harder. I think, I kind of loosely mentioned it, but Sam saying, "Oh, you're weird," is starting to come out in good ways mattered to me because she saw me working on just weird, and she questioned it. She was like, "What are you doing?" And this was when her like Sam, although she started around the same time as me, she obviously, picked up a lot faster. So I watched her take off, and while she's taking off, I'm working on my little weirdness, and she's like, "What are you doing, bro? We're over here taking off. You should do what we're doing." But that was her calling. So like I even if I would have done the thing she would have done, it wouldn't have been for me. So then for her to come back and circle around and see it that mattered a lot. I had my other buddy Garrett saw a noticeable change in my stand up where he was like, "Hey man, like you're getting strong as fuck on stage now, and it's starting to make sense in a way where I could see, the bigger picture now." I've met Chappelle and Burr and all these guys. They haven't pulled me aside yet, but there's been moments. There's a time where it was a joke from my Kevin Hart set. I didn't know Chris Rock was in the room at the time. He kind of comes out at the Comedy Store, and I walk out, and he looks at me after I did the joke, and he goes back in, and then like my friend was like, "That was Chris checking to see who did that joke." And I was like, "Okay,
Oh,
that felt good." Like just to know you have like a bar that people remember. So I haven't had that moment yet. I'm sure if I think of those smaller moments, I will, or in retrospect, it was somebody saying something. But there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with this. Forces you to be present.
not only that, it keeps you going on the times that are tough.
Yeah, Burr's right on that. It takes you through those lulls. It is tough, and I think it's not tough because like life is hard. It's tough because life doesn't make sense. It doesn't make mathematical sense. So you'll like during those lulls, you'll be having a bad day, and then they'll be like, "Well, so and so just gotta deal with Pepsi," and you're like, why is Pepsi and Debbie Cakes and this person doing the deal, and how does that make sense? And what the fuck? That doesn't even make sense. And now you have to comprehend that on top of your shitty day, and you're like, okay, this is stupid. So that's why it's like silly. So Bill Burr is probably like watching somebody do backflips and then all of a sudden get a TV show, and you're like, that doesn't even translate well, and that's why it's frustrating.
I think we're getting close to times here, so I
Yeah.
only have one other question for you. If you could tell something to old Keith Johnson that you know now, what would you say?
I think I spent a lot of time playing as much as the overall story was like, oh, I stuck to my guns. There was a moment where I put my gun down and I tried to play the game,
Wow.
and that didn't work. And when I picked it up, I noticed everyone else was just doing what I was doing, and I should have just stuck to my plan. So I think if I were to speak to young Keith or just people in general, sometimes you hear things and it's not. If you're hearing like crazy shit, go get checked out. But sometimes you hear like voices commanding you what to do. It's never wrong. It's you listen to that thing. So if it's like put out the newsletter today, you need to put it out that day, and just listen to that. So all the voices that or the commandments that I was hearing, or the voices that I was hearing guiding me, I should have always listened to those things, because it ultimately, when I circle back, I'm like, damn, that thing was correct. And I know it in that moment because I would remember it. So that's what I would say. Just listen to that, trust it, and trust being right, trust being wrong, trust the process a little more and enjoy it, you know?
That was poetic. That could have been that was poetic if it was over some beats. That could have been Cole ball right there. That was Cole-esque. I put the gun down and tried to play the game. That was Cole-esque. So I really love that. Outside of that, here's the last moment. Say anything, plug anything that you got going on, where people can find you, anything you got in your life.
Yeah, Instagram, Keith Johnson HQ. That's where you're gonna find most of my work. Same with YouTube. I have a comedy show in New York, July 29th. It's called On Site with Sam J. It's a late night comedy therapy show, and it's gonna be super fun. We're in Brooklyn at the Bell House, so pull up if you happen to be a listener from Seattle. I'm there August 1st at the Hereafter. Other than that, I'm posted up in LA, so find me, and hopefully I get that money and that access soon enough so you can see more of me.
That's awesome. It'll all be in the show notes, and I'll also share it out. Well, thanks Keith, for being here.
Thank you, man.